am Whisper Bees. I am Whisper Bees. And today I wanted to do a little different video. We're gonna do soft-spoken, obviously. And I'm gonna talk about psychology a little bit, just a little bit, okay? I don't have any makeup on today. So that's a sign for you to take off your makeup or wash your face or brush your teeth because it's time to relax and unwind. So, exactly. So let me talk to you about something. So, I really have been into psychology lately. Specifically, not specifically, I don't know. I'm really somebody who is fascinated by people. People are one of the most interesting things to me. So my most favorite topics in the entire world to discuss is psychology, number 1. Love talking about that. Sociology, number 2, because what are we if not a product of our environments, you know? Everything. We exist in the context. You think you fell out of a coconut tree? No, you didn't. And then number 3, philosophy, because that's kind of we talked about the mind, we talked about society, but where do we go from here? What's bigger than that? So those are my top 3 topics. Fun fact about me. Anyway, so I am a spiritual girly. I'm really into astrology and thinking about the universe as an energetic force, right? And a big part of spirituality is a concept known as shadow work. And I have been really thinking about shadow work a lot lately. I've had a lot of time on my hands recently, and a lot of mental health struggles as well. So I've been thinking a lot about shadow work and what it all means. And that brought me to the concept of Jungian psychology. So I decided to make a little video talking about the basics of Jungian psychology. So I took some notes. Thumbnail photo. I'm kidding. I don't know if any of you have noticed, but I never use actual moments from my video for my thumbnail, except for one time. I did it once, I think, so I'm just lying when I say thumbnail photo. I just think it's kind of funny. Okay, let's talk about Jungian psychology. So, to talk about Jungian psychology, we gotta start out with our main man, Carl Jung. I know it's spelled Jung, but I just came off the r/Jung subreddit, and I never go on Reddit. Don't even associate me with Reddit. I never go on there except for sometimes, because they kind of have, I enjoy input from the community, and that is a community that loves to give input. But I don't know how Reddit works. Maybe if I figured it out, I would know more. Anyways, the subreddit specifically specified that it's pronounced Jung, so I will be saying it as Jung, despite the fact that it is Jung. If you notice me kind of staring off into space, it is because I don't have my contacts in, and I am blind. I'm not blind, but I can't see. Anyways, so let's talk about Carl Jung. So Carl Jung was born July 26th in 1875, making him a Leo. He was born in Switzerland. And he was a psychiatrist, psychologist. He dealt with things of that matter, which led him down this path, unsurprisingly. He actually worked with Sigmund Freud. You might know a little bit about that guy. He's pretty famous. But they ended up parting ways due to a difference in theory, which, that's a logical conclusion. So Jung studied different cultures, mythology, religious and spiritual traditions, as well as psychiatry and psychology and stuff, to deepen his understanding of the more universal aspects of the human psyche. And Carl Jung died June 6th, 1961, and so I'm also a little bit of a history nerd. So he was born in 1875 and he died in 1961, and I was like, 1961 is a crazy year. So 1961 was the same year that Soviet cosmonaut Yuri Gagarin was the first man in space. So Jung probably didn't live to see that. I didn't even note the months. I didn't even consider that relevant. Okay. Berlin became divided. Crazy. And JFK was inaugurated as the President of the United States. So JFK and Carl Jung were alive at the same time. That's not crazy. I don't know. I thought it was interesting. Anyways, so let's talk about some key terms in the sense of Jungian psychology. So we've got individuation. And individuation is basically the integration of the conscious and the subconscious, the conscious and the unconscious aspects of our psyche. And our psyche is just the entirety of the human mind. So like our memories, our instincts, our feelings, that's going to be the psyche. So when I talk about the psyche, that means everything, okay? We've also got ego. So the ego is a part of the conscious mind. It is our active thought. It is our sense of self, our identity. It's your personal story about yourself. So the way you assign reasoning to things and your awareness of the world, as well as how you fit into it. So any statement that would start with I, that's going to be led by your ego. So I work at this place. That's your ego. That's part of how you fit into the world. I feel angry when I have to wait long in line. That's your ego. I don't know, like the color pink. That's your ego. That's how you feel. That's your conscious awareness of your sense of self. Okay, and then you have your personal unconscious. So your personal unconscious is your forgotten or suppressed memories, feelings, and experiences that still influence your behavior. So these are your hidden fears, your desires you don't want to really acknowledge, your dreams that you're not really actively aware of. It also includes your complexes that you fall into, which are just emotional themes surrounding certain areas in your life, like family and success and relationships and whatnot. A quote from Jung about the personal unconscious is, "Everything of which I know, but of which I am not at the moment thinking," which I really liked that quote. I think that kind of explained it really good, because you know these things, like I know that I'm scared to just run into the middle of the street, but I'm not always thinking like I can't run into the middle of the street, like I can't think that, but I know because of experiences where I've heard about people getting hit by cars, I've almost gotten hit by a car, stuff like that. Like I know, but I'm not actively thinking of it. or like somebody who might have like repressed trauma around, like, let's say dogs, for example. Like, they know they're scared of dogs, but they can't remember that time when they were 2 that they were bitten by a dog, like, because they repressed it, but they know they have an innate fear of dogs. And all fears are learned, so it came from somewhere, right? Okay, and then we've got the collective unconscious, and this is shared by all humans. So these are universal experiences, instincts, and archetypes. Now, Jung is really into archetypes, which I didn't really do a lot of research on. They didn't really like strike my interest at first, but I did want to look over them just for the sake of having a more complete basic understanding of what Jung was talking about. And I kind of found them to be a little more interesting as I looked into them. So if that's something you guys want me to make a video about, I might not do that, because I'm actually really bad at making videos when I say I'm gonna make them. Sorry. But I did define archetypes in my notes, and archetypes are just universal symbolic patterns that are embedded in our collective unconscious. So these are more so, they're not necessarily like roles you fill, but like patterns of behavior. And I have another quote from Jung where he said he described archetypes as an inherited mode of functioning. He has a way with words. What can I say? Straight from the source. Straight from the source. Every time I quote him, I'm like, wow, he's cooking. Yeah, that's a really good way to put it. Yeah, I wonder why. It's almost like this is his theory. So some examples of archetypes are like the caregiver, the hero, the sage. I forgot the other ones. There's like 12 of them. But like, you see these archetypes all the time in like movies. Like, you see the wise old man, that's the sage. You see the mother, that's the caregiver, that sort of thing. Okay, then we have the persona. So the persona is your social outward mask. This is the aspect of our personality that we present to navigate the external world. So our persona is heavily influenced by socialization. On the flip side of the persona, we have the shadow. So the shadow is our repressed and darker aspects of our psyche, the parts we may reject, disown, or just don't know about. It often contrasts our persona, so our persona kind of pulls from everything that's like socially acceptable, that has given us social success, whereas our shadow is everything that is kind of like not socially acceptable, the things we can't acknowledge, the things we'd rather just keep buried, keep in the shadow. The shadow isn't just a negative thing. It is our source of creative and destructive energies, and it gives us depth and balance. I drew a picture for you guys. It's not very good because I was confused. Okay, so we have the self. So Jung believed that the goal for everyone should be to achieve a state of selfhood through self-discovery, balance, and the aforementioned individuation, where we basically just kind of integrate the conscious and unconscious aspects. Also a part of our unconscious is the anima and the animus. that's basically going to be the mirror image of our biological sex. So it's the unconscious feminine side in males, and that's going to be the anima, or the unconscious masculine side in females, which is the animus. And this is derived from collective ideas of masculinity and femininity and like individual expressions. And the first experience that you have with the opposite sex is gonna get tucked in there, starting from your parents. And the anima and animus kind of complements our own personal ideas and senses of gender. And it represents our otherness, and how we don't fit in culturally. So like, as a female, my animus is what I see as masculine. So the parts of my gender that I don't feel are socially appropriate to perform. Jung didn't really believe, from what I read, Jung didn't really believe that there was like specific feminine and masculine traits, because it all kind of like manifests in us differently based on our own experiences with the opposite sex. So, and I think honestly we see a lot of that today with like the rise of like the manosphere and stuff. Like, just I think what we're culturally fed about masculinity and femininity really like speaks to like our unconscious animus, and like it others us. Like, they kind of weaponize it, where they're like, this is what a man should be, like if you're not like this, then you're not man enough. And that can get to people because of their, my cat just sneezed, God bless you, Trisket. But yeah, just because of their like unconscious beliefs about men and women and their role in society, and that sense of otherness, that sense of this isn't socially acceptable, this is not the role I should be fulfilling in society, and that can cause a lot of friction between the ego and the shadow, from my understanding. This is all theoretical. Nobody knows what's going on inside the brain. Well, I'm sure some people have a pretty good idea, but I definitely don't. I'm literally a college dropout, so but I think all of our opinions and experiences have value in that sense. That was a side tangent. My bad. But yeah, and the anima and animus, it's usually, since it's a part of our unconscious psyche, we usually don't encounter it except through projection. So projection seems to be a really big theme in Jungian psychology, and projection also is encountered with the shadow self as well. And that's usually when, so you have these negative traits that you're not even aware of. But say, for example, you get into a relationship with somebody and you hate how they're late all the time and how this and that. Like, a lot of the things you hate about them are actually things that you relate to but dislike. And that's projection. So again, in terms of the anima and animus and the manosphere, like I had mentioned just a few moments ago, you see, like, there's that trope where like the homophobic bully is secretly gay, and that is an example of projection. They see a gay person, and somewhere inside of them they acknowledge that they relate, that they experience same-sex attraction, but they're disgusted by it, they don't think it's acceptable, and so they often react aggressively and externally to express that internal aggression that they feel toward themselves. So that's like an example of projection. In my understanding, I feel like saying in my understanding is the same as like those gossip channels on YouTube, or the true crime channels that always say allegedly. allegedly. Like, don't quote me on this. And then I had a final little note about Jungian therapy. So Jungian therapy involves a lot of shadow work, which I mentioned that the spiritual girlies absolutely love. And it also involves a lot of like dream analysis and like symbolic analysis, because the goal again is to integrate the conscious and the unconscious so that you get balance and harmony between the ego and the shadow. And then I drew a picture for you guys. So here's the picture I drew. So we got yourself, and I know it's at the center, but yourself is a collection of everything. Okay, so you've got your consciousness up here, and your consciousness is influenced or influences the ego and your persona. Your persona is your mask. So the ego is the story you're telling about yourself. I am Whisper Bees. I do ASMR. This is the story I'm telling. And this is what I'm consciously aware of. So my persona, the mask that I'm putting on, is somebody calm, somebody quiet, somebody relaxing. And then you have the personal unconscious, and these are the things that you're not actively aware of but still influence your behavior. And then you have the collective unconscious, which is the human experience. That's kind of what I figured it to be. Like, there's just so many things that, like, us as humans, we all share collectively. And that's going to be the collective unconscious. These are our instincts. These are, Jung described it as like genetically passed down, genetically passed down almost. And I see a lot of that kind of get brought up today with like the idea of like breaking the cycle, and like talks about trauma and stuff, like inherited trauma, like when people talk about how generational trauma, that sort of thing, like how it's passed down, it's in your genes because your grandma at some point in time experienced a famine, and now you, generations later, have a weird relationship with food because somewhere in your genetic code there is a connection between food insecurity and you and all that stuff. That's how I interpreted it, at least allegedly. And then also in your collective unconscious there is the animus and the anima, because while the animus and anima are influenced by your own individual experiences, it's still also influenced by society and the sociological, what's the word? I can't think, I'm getting hot. The connotations and the cultural expectations of your gender roles and whatnot. So, that was me going over the basics of Jungian psychology. I hope you enjoyed it. I hope you found it informative. I hope I'm not spreading misinformation. I found this to be a really interesting topic, and after taking all these notes, I did go onto the Reddit page r/Jung, and I was looking at some of the posts, and a lot of people had some very interesting things to say. I personally really love acknowledging the unconscious aspects. So if you guys know of any more topics along these lines, I would love to hear about them, and maybe I'll do some research, and maybe I'll even make a video. Oh my gosh, imagine that, me making a video. Anyways, thank you so much for spending this time with me. Thank you so much for spending this time with yourself. Self-care is super important, and I appreciate you carving time out for you to just relax and unwind. I hope you found